You're listening to the Drink Less Booze, Live How You Choose podcast, the podcast that will help you to change your relationship with alcohol one step at a time so that you can focus on what truly matters. I am your host, Dr Fiona Dowman. I'm a qualified clinical psychologist in the UK, and I'm here to share evidence-based mindfulness and values-driven strategies to help you understand what's keeping you stuck and take practical steps towards lasting change. Quick note, if you feel you might be physically dependent on alcohol, quitting suddenly can be dangerous, so it's best to speak to your GP or your local alcohol service. Hello and welcome to another episode of Drink Less Booze, Live How You Choose. Have you ever found yourself reaching for a drink but you're not really sure why? You might have a sense of feeling stressed or trying to take the edge off. What if I told you that the drive behind your drinking is not feeling stressed, but it's your thoughts about stress? This episode is for you if you're interested in finding out all about how powerful our thoughts can be and how thoughts can impact our actions, including having a drink. So let's get into it. You can probably think of a time when you've got lost in your thoughts until you snap out of it and then you realise that you've been on that thought train for ages. This usually happens to me when I'm doing something on autopilot, like having a shower or washing up, and then all of a sudden I catch myself and I realise that my mind has been wandering. This happens to all of us. So why am I banging on about thoughts in this episode? Well, it's because our thoughts are powerful. They impact the way that we feel and they impact the things that we do. So for example, if you had a deadline coming up at work tomorrow, it's likely that you would have some kind of thoughts about it. So you might be thinking, oh my God, how am I going to meet this deadline? I don't have enough time. Time is running out. I'm going to get into trouble for this. What if I lose my job? What will I do without a job? Why do I always leave everything to the last minute? Etc., etc. And in response to those thoughts, you're likely to feel some kind of stress or anxiety. And you're going to do something in response to that because as humans, we don't like to feel discomfort and we want to do something to try and get rid of that discomfort. So you might decide to have a drink to try to feel relaxed and get those anxious thoughts out of your head. You might avoid the task altogether. You might start doing something to keep yourself busy and feel like you're being productive. Or it might kick you into gear and you might start working on the project so that you can meet the deadline. There's going to be some kind of response to your thoughts in this situation. Our thoughts can be positive, negative, helpful, or less helpful, but one thing that's for certain is that we are constantly thinking. Take right now, for example, what are you thinking about? What is going through your mind? If you want, you can pause this episode and take a moment just to notice what is going through your mind right now. So you might be thinking about this episode and wondering what I'm going to talk about. You might be thinking about something that you need to do later on, or you might be thinking about something that happened yesterday. I couldn't possibly know because thoughts are private. They're private events that happen in the mind, and nobody would know what you're thinking about unless you actually tell them. So why are our thoughts so powerful? Well, it's because we tend to just accept our thoughts and we feel like we need to respond to them and give them our attention. So it's a bit like if we imagine our thoughts are like a spider's web, we get tangled up in a spider's web of thoughts. So let's think of some examples of common thoughts that people have about drinking. So it might be, I need a drink to relax. I'll be missing out if I don't have a drink. It's really hard to stop drinking. I've tried in the past. I'll just have one. Those kind of thoughts. So if we imagine that we're caught up in this web of thoughts, it would be really hard to move. There would be no wiggle room, would there? So it'd be hard for us to do anything that's really important to us, anything that really matters, like cook a meal. It'd be hard to spend time with our family. It'd be hard to work on a project or do some exercise. But if we could detangle ourselves from this web and take a step back and observe this web of thoughts from a distance, now we would be free to move, wouldn't we? So we can still see that web of thoughts. It's still there, but we have that freedom to move and do the things that matter. So if we think of those examples of thoughts again, like I need a drink, I need it to relax, it's too hard to stop, I'll just have one. If we can observe those thoughts from a distance, it frees us up to then do things like decide to delay having a drink and go for a run instead, or allow those thoughts to chatter away in our mind like a radio going on in the background, and decide to spend time with our family instead. So it can be useful to learn how to create some distance from our thoughts so that we can observe them rather than getting caught up in them, because we are not our thoughts. We have thoughts, and then there's a part of us that notices those thoughts. So I'm going to invite you now to do a task that will help you to create a bit of distance between yourself and your thoughts. So the first step is to notice your thoughts. This can be really difficult to do when we're not used to it. So you need to pause and deliberately take the time to notice what's going through your mind. That's the first step. And then the technique is to put the phrase, I notice I'm having the thought that, in front of whatever thought you notice. So for example, if the thought was, I'll be missing out if I don't have a drink, it would become, I notice I'm having the thought that I'm missing out if I don't have a drink. Try that and see if it makes a difference to how powerful that thought is and what you decide to do in response. A lot of people notice that simple phrase, I notice I'm having the thought, really creates some distance from the thought and takes some of the power out and stops you from getting really caught up and tangled up in the thoughts. If you give this a go, I'd really love to hear how you got on, how you found it. So please do get in touch. All the different ways you can get in touch with me are written in the show notes. If you'd like a practical guide to help you practice being more mindful of your thoughts so that you can notice them more, then definitely download my free 20-minute mindful drinking audio guide by going to drinklessbooze.co.uk. The link is in the show notes. I'll speak to you soon. If you found today's episode helpful, then please subscribe and leave a review, as this helps the podcast to reach more people. And please share it with anyone you know who might find it helpful. Speak to you soon.